Good morning. We're continuing the mimer. We're up to the second ice. There are two ideas so far, or more than two, but two central ideas, and that is that the sin of eating of the tree of knowledge brought about death in the world, which originally the plan was for them to live forever. We explained that because they, as a result of eating from the tree of knowledge, there's a blend of good and bad. So everything that's good has some bad in it, and everything that's bad has some good in it. And therefore, the person who really is good has some bad within them. And therefore, they couldn't live forever because bad can't last forever. It has to end at some point. Fine. But then and therefore, it's not so much of a punishment, it's just a consequence, or a result, that because he ate from the tree of knowledge, we need to get rid of the bad, and that's by the person passing away. But then he explained that it's not really, or not only because since he ate from it and now he has bad and the bad can't live forever, but there's a deeper level, and that is he brought into his life a spiritual death. Impurity and klippa and the ra, the other side of Hashem, is bad, and it represents spiritual death. And because he had spiritual death in his life, that caused physical death. Because everything in this world is a result, everything that's physical stems from the spiritual. And therefore, what's going to be when Mashiach will come and a person is going to live forever, what's really transpiring here is that there is a good in the world, a spiritual good. We're getting rid of the spiritual bad, and therefore the physical bad is gone. And that's going to be when Mashiach comes. So two parts. One is technical, and one is, well, they're both technical, but one seems like a punishment or a consequence. And the other one is just bring more good into your life. It'll play itself out. Bring more spiritual good in your life. It's going to play itself out in physical good. Which is an important point to ponder in general, that everything we have in the physical is a result of what's going on in the spiritual. Base. So we're saying that when Mashiach is going to come, bad will become nullified. What's the reason that specifically in the future, the bad will become batal? Because then, when Mashiach will come, there's going to be a very high level of a revealed spiritual light. How's it going to work? What's the process? There's going to be this revelation of light, a spiritual light. And because it's such a strong spiritual light, the bad, the evil, will become batal automatically. It's not that you have to eradicate it, or you have to fight it, destroy it. The light is going to be so powerful that they just become batal on their own, they're going to become nullified. And he explains in the Maimer, even though that also when the Beis HaMikdash was still standing, especially during the first Beis HaMikdash, and it's more so in the times of Shlomo HaMelech, that the moon was complete. The full moon represents peace and good things. So there was there was a very high level of light. And it was such a big gilui, welcome, that all of the nations of the world were batal, they were nullified before Shlomo HaMelech. During the times of Shlomo HaMelech, there were no wars. It's not just that, the king was so great, we won the war or we defeated them. They didn't even try to fight with us. Why? Because there was a tremendous light, a gilui. Just like we said, when Mashiach will come, there's going to be a big gilui, that impurity will disappear, and therefore spiritual death will disappear, and therefore physical death will disappear. So he says, 1 second, we had this gilui in the past. During the times of the first Beis HaMikdash, there was tremendous spiritual light. There was prophecy, there were miracles. We have prophecy today also, but it was a prophecy all over the place. And in the times of Shlomo HaMelech, Shlei Adin Melchama Klal became batal, the nations of the world, and the enemies of the Jews were completely nullified on their own. It wasn't through a war. Shalachei Nikra b'Shem Shloimeh. That's why he's called Shlomo HaMelech. Ki Shalom Hoya B'Yamav, because it was peace in his days. Meaning, he represented peace. During his reign, there was peace. His name means peace. So how come there was still death? If we're saying Gilead gets rid of the evil, impurity, and therefore it gets rid of spiritual, physical impurity, and therefore you can live forever because there's no problem. Why not? The only reason why there's death is because impurity can't last forever. How come we didn't find it by Shlomo HaMelech, by the first Beis HaMikdash? You only find it here when Mashiach will come. Nonetheless, this revelation that existed in the times of Shlomo HaMelech was in such a way that there was still room for the externalities. In Kabbalah, it's called chitzonim, the outsiders, the other stuff, which means the unholiness. They could still have some kind of siphoning of spiritual energy. You see, there's two types of nullification. One is when they're chased away, they're not welcomed, but they still have to survive, and they survive off leftover energy, if you will. But then there's another level where they become completely batal.
What's batal?
Nullified. Zero, nada.
Yeah.
So during the times of Shlomo HaMelech, you had a tremendous light, a revelation of godliness, but there was still the ability for the other sides and the enemies of the Jews. They wouldn't dare start because they realized, whoa, this is big stuff, but they still existed. If they could, they would. Their sustenance or their suckling was only from the backside of holiness, so to speak. It's a little bit of a hard concept to understand. There's two types of energies. There's energy that's given face to face, which represents love, directness, desire. And then there is those that get some of the leftovers, the scraps. They come from the back door. They manage to scrape something off. They're not connecting on an internal, deep way, but they're still surviving. They're still existing in that manner. So during the times,
are they extant in heaven?
they exist all over. It's just impurity, impure energy, if you will.
Okay.
Shleimer. The Zeh Shebemei Shleimer. And this, that in the times of Shlomo HaMelech, there was still room that the other side, the impure forces, could get some kind of energy. It's noticeable if you look at the way that the other nations were nullified for him. You could see that concept. Just like the Queen Sheba. The Queen Sheba, what happened was she was in her land, and she just heard that there's this Jewish king, and everyone's talking about him, and he's an amazing person. She had some type of nullification or humility towards him. And because of that, she traveled to Shlomo. Now, for one queen to go and visit another king is not typical. Okay? What do you mean? I'm important. But she had such bittul, she was so nullified, recognizing the greatness of Shlomo HaMelech, which is a huge concept. And she got up and she traveled to him. Ubefrat, and especially after she came to him. First, she just heard about it, and that caused a stir within her, and she became batal. She was nullified. But then she came to him, and she saw his wisdom, which Shlomo HaMelech was the wisest of all people that ever lived. To the extent that she became so nullified and so humble before him, she had no spirit, meaning she was completely taken by him. So this would be a level that the light is so strong, the revelation of the spiritual shine is so bright that the other side just dissipates. They just join forces. They see the greatness. However, nonetheless, she was still a queen. So here's the kicker. She was nullified, and even though she was a queen, she got up from her palace and she went to Shlem HaMelech, and she lost her breath, so to speak, because she was taken by his wisdom and everything. But ultimately, she didn't say, "Here's my keys, here's my card, you're in charge." She went back home. Right? She was still a queen. It's a great level. She wasn't going to fight with the Jews. There was definitely no wars. But if you start to dissect it and really see what is the level of the Gilui Or that existed in the times of Shleim HaMelech, in the times of the first Beis HaMikdash, versus what will be when Mashiach will come, it's a lower level. The other sides, they still exist. They get their energy from holiness, because everything comes from holiness. They get it from the back. It's not from the internal way, but they're here. So it's not a full bittul. We say them is more than that. Shagam Shleime Kibud Esa B'Kavod Gadol. Shleim HaMelech also honored her with tremendous respect. So she still had her status. She was still a queen. But when there's going to be the revelation of Mashiach will come, 2 lines from the bottom of the paragraph, then it's going to be in a way that there's going to be no room for the other side to have any type of suckling. Not from the back door.
Like not even the memory of it.
Memory? Okay. Yeah. I mean, there sometimes when you're so taken away by it, so then it's a distant past. It's like saying, he doesn't bring this example here, but in other places it's brought about a dog that eats the scraps of a meal. You have a noble feast, and there's amazing meat and delicacies and whatever else, fancy dishes, everything, and all the important aristocrats are sitting around and they're eating. And then some dog comes along and gets something that fell on the ground, I don't know, a bone or something, right? No one's going to say, this feast that was there was for the dog. No one's going to say that. But the dog is eating and surviving off it. We have a concept where it's not designed for that person, for that entity, and no one even wants to waste it on that entity or give it to them because they're bad in this case. And they're doing negative things. But they're surviving off it. Now, I'm not saying that the dog is bad, but if you would have looked, in that analogy, if you look at the other nations as the enemy that is a problem and that's out to destroy us and so on, then of course you're not going to invite them to the meal and give them sustenance. But during the times of Shlem HaMelech, they knew that they're under the table and they wouldn't even try to start, but they still got the energy and the life force. So the difference, this is our question. What's the difference if you're saying that we're going to eradicate impurity by having such a bright light of holiness, which is will be when Mashiach will come, and then therefore we live forever? We had this in history, and people didn't live forever. So he answered that what we had was a very high Gilui Or, a very high revelation of light, but they weren't bottled completely. They still existed. They were at bay, right? They weren't going to fight with us. They even recognized who we were, but she was still a queen, as one example, right? Shlem HaMelech even respected her, honored her, showed her some level of honor. So the answer in one word is, depends how, or it's not such a large revelation of light. There's levels. It's enough to keep things under control, but it's not enough to eradicate it. Okay, let's understand this a little bit more. Gimel. To explain better this difference between this that existed in the times of Shleim HaMelech. That because of this Gilui, there is still room for the energy to reach the other side. At least from the back. The difference between that revelation during the times of Shleim HaMelech to the revelation that will be when Mashiach will come. That because of this Gilui, there won't be any type of suckling of energy. To understand that, he explains this is similar to the difference between someone who turns away from bad versus somebody who is despised by bad. In Chasidus, we explain there's two levels. A typical person is faced with, let's use food as an analogy, he's faced with a piece of shrimp, and he wants it, but he's staying away from it because it's forbidden. That's called sur meira. I'm turning away from the bad. I want it, it's available. If I could, I would. Then there is mu'as bira, that he's disgusted by it. Not because of the taste, but because he says Hashem doesn't want it, I'm not interested. He's not just turning away from it and struggling and overcoming and dealing with it. He's repulsed by it. Okay, that's two general concepts. And normally, one is the avodah of a Beinani, or up to a Beinani, someone that is working and struggling that the good in his life should overcome the bad, and he should make the right decisions. But the mu'az bira is the level of a tzaddik. That a tzaddik, he's so one with Hashem, he loves Hashem so much, that anything that's antithesis to Hashem, he hates. He's disgusted by it. Okay? So using this concept of there's a difference between sur meira and mu'az bira, we can understand the difference between the light that will be when Mashiach will come and what that's going to accomplish in the world versus the light that was in the times of Shlomo HaMelech and what that did. The sur meira, what's sur meira? He's pushing away the bad. But he doesn't hate the bad literally. Okay? He pushes it away. He doesn't hate it.
At this time, it's the second temple, right?
In general, a person that's serving Hashem is faced with some kind of opportunity or desire.
My question is was there death at the time?
Yes. He doesn't hate the bad, essentially. Even though practically speaking, he does push it away. First line on the next page. There's still room for bad. In other words, he could do it. He's not going to today. Hopefully he'll never do it, but it's not so far off. Is a to the extent that even in a concealed way, there's even a little bit of a love for that ra. He actually wants it, which is a lower level, right? I mean, it's great that he's not doing it, but he loves it. Like it's explained in Tanya regarding the level of a tzaddik which is not complete. Why is it not complete? Because his actions are complete, and even his desires are where they're supposed to be. But in a concealed way, somewhere deep down, there's some kind of love for this bad behavior, which would be a problem, because if you really love Hashem, then anything Hashem doesn't want, you're against. But when he is disgusted by bad, which means not just practically and not just on some level, but he actually, to the ultimate degree, he hates bad. I guess tzaddik gomer is the level of tzaddik gomer. There's no room at all by him for bad. It's not like, I really, really want it, but what could I do? I'm not allowed to, and this and that. It doesn't even begin. On the contrary, he hates the bad. And he's disgusted by it with the ultimate hatred and disgustion. Okay, so there's two types. I don't do it because I'm not allowed to, but I want to, or at least on some level I want to. I actually love it, right? Or I'm disgusted by it because I love Hashem so much, and anything that's bad, I hate. And similarly, this is the difference between the revelation that was in the times of Shlomo HaMelech to the revelation that will be when Mashiach will come. The revelation that was in the times of Shlomo HaMelech, even though that, let's not underestimate it, the revelation that existed in the times of Shlomo HaMelech was quite powerful, and all of the opposing forces were nullified, meaning they didn't fight with the Jewish people. They weren't a threat. Similar to the avodah of sur meira, turning away from the bad, that he actually pushes it away. He doesn't do it. Right? The person has some negative desire. He doesn't act on it. Pushes it away. He wants it. Doesn't act on it. The nations in the times of Shlomo HaMelech, if they could, they would fight with the Jewish people. But they were nullified, so they didn't. But they may still want to. There's still room for a suckling, a receiving of energy for the other side. At least from the other side of Kedusha. But the revelation that Mashiach will come, that is analogous to someone that is repulsed by the bad with the ultimate repulsion. It's disgusting to me. There's no room at all for anything that's the opposite of Kedusha. Okay? You tell a person that certain food is not healthy for you. He may still want it, right? But he's whatever. Maybe he will, or he won't. Hopefully he won't eat it if it's not healthy for him. He loves it. If he could, he would. But then there's poison. And somehow you feel like this is, you don't want to get close to it. Even though getting close to it is not going to do anything to you necessarily, but you're disgusted by it. In a similar way, there's two levels. Both of those things he's not eating, right? But one of them he's not even struggling with. It's gross, right? So in Avodah and serving Hashem, sometimes there's a level that I turn away from the bad, and sometimes I don't turn away from it. I have to. I'm disgusted by it. I don't even want it. Let's stop here for davening, but God willing, we'll continue tomorrow. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thanks for joining online and in person.